Thank you very much, and thank you for having us here today. I think things like UbiQ are terrific for the community, and I think it's a real great service, so thank you for all this. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about basically the ecosystem that we play in, which is I think what we've been talking about all the time. But first, a little bit about MORPH. Essentially what we do is we've got a platform that helps content creators, curators, and distributors to really figure out what's going on in their environment. You know, we help to measure, we help to manage, we service through cross-platform measurement and analytics, and we also provide a series of functions to help manage rights, royalties, and determining and optimizing how you sell your products. We launched the product back in 2009 and funded by Motorola Mobility Ventures. We're in New York, London, and LA. And our customers are primarily the US film studios, television networks, as well as a few of the distributors as well. So and I just did this slide to make sure I could have UbiQ in here. I hadn't seen anybody actually use the word ubiquitous, so I figured I would. Basically the world that we play in, the world that we think about is the one that we've been talking about, I think, for the last 2 days. In which that you've got a world in which the consumer choice for how you get entertainment to be distributed is endless. As I think a fellow from Funimation said, if content is king, distribution is God, and God now is rather all-encompassing and rather immediate as well. You know, in the old days, your next distribution window might be in 3 years. Today, it's about an hour after your first broadcast. Similar things for film as well. So, there's just many different ways that your content gets out there as a creator and or as a curator. And the result of all of these things, in the end, is you've got lots of different ways that you can distribute your content, very varying economic models for each of those methods, so a lot of potential channel conflict. Fragmented audiences, making it difficult to count and present that back to an advertiser. And overall, this measurement complexity as well. What does this mean? So ultimately, with those three things, you just have a lot of questions. It used to be simple to say what your total audience was for a telecast or for other things. Now it's a bit more difficult. Determining whether or not you should do a deal, as some of the things that Gary had been talking about, that's also a big question. What should your pricing be? Some of the problems that sort of traditional media companies have faced is that things like Netflix, things like over-the-top television have really made it difficult to determine what syndication pricing will be. The value is going down, the value is indeterminate. What do your catalog films sell? Again, the value is quite difficult. How do you best put these things together? Is your strategy working? Where is your revenue going to come from today, tomorrow, next year? Are your deals going to be working? It's a bit of a shot in the dark. So that's kind of the environment that's going on right now. So I'm going to talk about a couple of case studies for a couple of our customers. One is from a major U.S. broadcast network, and their problem was what we talked about was that they have many channels, many shows, really trying to understand what their total audience was to present to advertisers, to figure out how to manage their programming, was something that wasn't quite clear. And then putting all that information together in a timely way across many different distribution platforms was a little bit difficult. So the solution is what they did was they pulled that all together from about 50 platforms for them. We enabled them to have a next day view similar to Nielsen of how their content is doing across all networks, all platforms. And we were able to give them really clear visibility. So the result of this was that their programming group really understood how their performance was. They got back up to the point where they had been, so they knew, relatively soon after airing how their show is doing across all media, as opposed to waiting for a week or a month or two to figure that out, so they can make faster programming decisions. And this particular network in the fall season of last year made some very rapid programming decisions with that to switch out some older shows, switch out some shows which hadn't been performing anywhere. But then with new shows that tended to perform a bit better, perhaps across multiple networks. The other thing, too, is that they were able to see exactly where their audiences were coming from. There was a great variation where folks were watching a particular show. Wasn't the mixture of nonlinear sources there was quite a bit of variation. And that's what helped them really targeting their marketing and promotions a bit better. And then finally, advertisers were given a pretty consistent view of where the cross-media, total media audience existed. So in this way, they were able to see kind of a breakdown, sort of a sample report, telecast by telecast, of how you're doing across video on demand, how you're doing across your traditional television audience, how it goes on internet, and basically have a simple report, have a simple view. Though it seems rather simple, it's quite a bit to put together. But having this, brings your traditional companies back up to the level of knowledge perhaps where they had been. So they're able to manage a bit better and make their decisions, with the rapidity as which they used to in the past. So our second film study is for on film and TV distribution, more of the creators, if you will. And here, the complexity, again, is many different models for distribution, many different windows for distribution, making choices as to what to sell when and for how much. So again, analytics was the solution. Putting all the data together, being able to have that into a single deal planning environment and being able to drive licensing consistently throughout in a way that was able to maximize revenue. So now in this way, in this new environment where you've got all these different modes of distribution, where you're making over-the-top deals, where you're making streaming deals, where you're making traditional paid deals, there's a common set of data for that to be made. And again, these are some of the best practices that we've seen. So in terms of the learnings from all of this, there's a few observations that we've been able to come together with. So really, ultimately, understanding where your audience is coming from, where your audience views shows, is really critical to growing them. Having negative information also can be just as important as positive information, allowing you to make more timely show replacements. And ultimately, demographics. This is one problem that we've noticed across all of this. There is a mismatch in demographics across multiple platforms. Having data enabled across all of them, being able to overlay demographics is really what's going to be able to drive the growth of these new platforms and drive the revenue and monetization of these new platforms. Obviously, the ubiquity of film and TV, that's going to have a big impact on pricing in later windows. Again, a bit more sort of on the pressure and distribution, and really what's needed, I think, is sort of a consistent set of audience reporting. So data is really the lifeblood of all of this. Having that all come together in one place and having that all have consistent metrics is really what's needed to drive the overall monetization of the industry as it bifurcates across different platforms. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Let's talk about data.
Okay.
I do want to, I have been amiss this morning. I've been a little bit sleepy. I'm sorry, probably like you guys. Are there any questions from the audience for any of the first 15 speakers?
I'll answer them all.
Because he will answer them all for you. Yeah, Kate, no. A little late now, I'm sorry. Is there any questions here? No? Everyone's like, I'm awake. What's going on? Sorry? Yeah, how are you different from Trender?
Sure, so Trender is primarily measuring social audiences, as I understand it.
Yeah.
Mark and I actually used to work together at Sony Music.
Interesting.
So, we're all from the same. And you used to work with Tim, I think.
Yeah. Tim at Juiced, yeah.
Yeah. So he's measuring primarily social, which we do as well, but we're more tied into measuring audience and revenue across a variety of networks. So they sort of match up together, and plenty of our customers use both Trender and MORPH.
Okay, got to ask you the tough question. How do you get the data?
Oh, we get it a variety of different ways. So in some cases, we aggregate and we pull it in from sources like a Nielsen. So for audience data, for the larger networks, Nielsen's the only thing that's trusted. In other cases, we get it directly through relationships with the third parties, with the word gets out. And
last question, data, more about trending. Not really that great. People, we look at this data, and even when we were at Juiced, and I think Tim can tell you this too, is that we had tons of data coming in. It's very difficult to get good data. How do you determine that your data is really solid?
Yeah, and that's the big problem, which is what I was alluding to. The data itself, in terms of views or in terms of telling you what what's been viewed. That's pretty solid. That's there. What is really important is the demographics. So really trying to understand what portion of this viewing on Hulu was 18 to 24 male, that's somewhat impossible to know.
Yeah.
So you overlay surveys, you overlay demographics on top of it, but that's one of the biggest challenges facing the industry, and that's one of the biggest monetization challenges for all of this inventory of video. If you can't say you're delivering this kind of audience the way that Nielsen or Barb can tell you're delivering this kind of audience, it's really going to be hard to price it, and it's really going to be hard to sell it.
Nielsen and Barb sort of making it up. Let's be realistic.
But they believe it.
But they believe it.
They believe
Last
it.
question. For our European fellows, that may not be a big deal, but in the U.S., in March and April, U.S. network television shows lost 20 to 25% of their audience. Unbelievable. We've never seen this before. What happened? Do you have any insight?
Well, I mean, the audience, well, maybe it was a bit of the shows themselves. I mean, there was, there was a competition in other ways. There was different news going on. It was a bit of a cycle in terms of what was going on in terms of
Where did
the
this
shows.
audience go? Where did these 20% go? Did they go online?
Some say that they go online. It's really indeterminate at this point in time as to where they actually went. But nonetheless, I mean, right after that, the upfronts were still pretty fluffy.
It's always the same. She's saying, the journalist is saying, you're the analytics guy, you should know.
Well, unfortunately, they didn't go to other mediums for the same television.
They didn't go to other mediums.
No.
So that's what you saw, that they didn't go, they just disappeared.
They ceased to watch it on linear networks. And,
where they could be captured.
Correct.
Interesting, because it's been something I've been struggling with for a couple of months, trying to find out for some of our clients, and we talk to people all over the place, and
it's a bit of a mystery.
It is a bit of a mystery, and they haven't come
there.
out and done the correction where they say, you know what, it was our data. There were PPM meters weren't working.
Yeah, Nielsen hasn't done that yet. They
haven't done it.
They may do it.
But Kate, they will. Are you okay with that? Okay, is that a good enough answer? Are you gonna be nice to him? Yes, you will. Okay, let's move on.